Welcome to the OIC podcast. This is going to be part 2 of the power of letting go. My name is Noah Hansen, here with Kevin Peterson, and we are excited to bring you the next 6 points that have to do with the power of letting go.
Thank you, Noah. And to be able to do a recap from the previous podcast, when I started this list, the first one was understand that the relationships that you thought you'd have are going to be different than the ones you actually have. Number 2 is don't be invested in the outcomes when it comes to dealing with people because it often leads to disappointment. The third one was don't live in chains when you have the key. We live with self-limiting beliefs that we let define who we are. Number 4 is let go of the idea that you can control others' actions. We really only have control over ourselves and how we act. And then number 5 was only worry about what you think of yourself, right? So now, number 6, leave room for mistakes. That's a very big and important one that we covered in the last podcast. So now, moving on to number 7. Accept the things that you cannot change. This is something that is really, really life-affecting to many people because of the need in the field to be in control.
Yes.
When you falsify your emotional need to be in control, you are more out of control emotionally, physically, and spiritually than ever before.
Yeah, especially when it comes to things that you can't change.
The reason why you need a support system with change is that you can allow other people to be able to give you insights, knowledge, and information that would help you to be able to come up with techniques, ideas, and procedures to help you to be able to make that change. Without being able to do that, you're freely opening yourself up for a disbelief system that can never change along with the change that you need to make.
Right, the belief that things can't change, you're saying.
Correct.
That's that disbelief system.
Mm-hmm. So, accept the things that you cannot change. Now, when you alone accept it, what ends up happening is that the fight ends.
Right.
Because you're bringing in literally those people into the fight with you. So it's not a you against the world experiment. It is you with other people literally co-teaming with you to allow you to be able to make that change a reality. So in closing with number 7 is that in order to be able to make that change, bring people that you highly recommend that have sound wisdom and knowledge and experience in that area to be able to come into your circle, to be able to then listen to how they have overcome things, to be able to make that change so that you can change with them.
Right.
Because your change is actually helping to be able to change their lives as well. Because it's a whole different perspective, right? Everyone has their own unique perspective, just like they have their own fingerprint, right? So you never know that your wisdom might end up being the guidance that someone else needs. So where 2 or more gathered together, so is the church, right? So we are blessed to be able to allow other people to come into our lives that we trust, to be able to have a trust bond, to then make the change, and to be able to renew the situation between me and you, right?
Yeah, break the chains.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So number 8, don't take yourself so seriously. The reason why we get into a situation to where we take ourselves so seriously and to make situations more serious is because we're not in control of the situation at hand.
Right, but you want to be in control.
Right. So you get harder on yourself, you get more almost threatening to yourself. You have this mindset that you need to be able to make things more difficult. And because of that, it just gets to really be a central focus of seriousness that doesn't need to necessarily be there in your life.
Right. It's like putting the handcuffs on your own hands. You're locking yourself in place.
Yes. And so don't take yourself so seriously. So how do you be able to overcome that? Is that you need to be able to then, when you're talking with other people, women, you're phenomenal at this, and I want to compliment you on that, is that you need to be able to talk things out. The more that you talk it out, the freeing emotionally, physically, spiritually, that naturally allows that seriousness to be able to kind of dwindle and kind of fade away. Without being able to talk things out, we get imprisoned by our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own emotions, and that's what bottles up that seriousness, that when you then try to be able to do anything serious with it, it all becomes a great, beautiful failure. And you then ask yourself, why? Well, I'm being serious about this. I'm trying to be dedicated in being able to do something. But again, it's because you have focused too much on the serious part side versus the natural side of the situation, clouding your judgment to make an intelligent, well-informed decision.
Yeah. Another thing that women especially happen to be very adept at, very good at often, is the power of keeping a journal or a diary. And we just released a video on this for the OIC in a New Way video series on how many benefits there really are to writing. And a lot of it has to do with what we're talking about here, is not taking yourself so serious, but also getting someone or some place where you can have an emotional release of words, whether it's written or spoken, to be able to kind of look at yourself from a third person perspective. And in doing that action, you have a self-expression in that allows you to get a lot off your chest, and that helps you to be less stressed. And through being less stressed, it's a lot easier to take yourself less seriously.
Yes, and it creates a creative element within the situation to be looked at more calmly.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really be writing very ferociously. Nothing's going to show up in a legible way. So you kind of have to slow yourself down in writing. But also when you're talking to another person, you do have that freedom to be able to express yourself verbally, violently, even if you need to. If you need to get something really off your chest and confide in someone in that way, it's very healthy to do that.
And the reason why it's healthy to be able to do that is because if you can't be real in conversation with someone, if you can't really express how you're feeling to a good friend, a best friend, someone that you confide in or trust, then everything else becomes fake phony. It becomes really kind of surface. It really becomes adequate of what you're really wanting to be able to do in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So having these vent sessions actually helps both people, because it bridges the gap of communication of, okay, so should I have been this serious or not as serious, and why is that effective, right? Mm-hmm. So that's number 8.
Yeah, and one more point on this. Humor is important. And when you allow yourself to have humor in situations that aren't comfortable, then you can even smile your way through that situation, and it allows you to kind of be more uplifted through that stressful situation, so that you don't have to be kind of down in the dumps just because you're stressed. You can have jokes, you can have humor that is it's another form of emotional release in a kind of a different way.
Yes, very profound in what you said.
Yeah, it is important. So humor has been one thing that's really helped me out in life. When I can laugh through a stressful situation, it has, I've noticed it really does take a lot of weight off your chest.
It does. Number 9, do what scares you.
Ooh.
This is something that is reverse psychology to its extreme. What I mean by do what scares you is that everything that you've ever wanted is one step, one act outside of your comfort zone. You've heard this for years, and you've heard it so much that it becomes a cliche. But the bottom line is that if what you're doing doesn't scare you in a good way, it can't be able to help you in any way. Because why would you be doing it anyway, right?
Right.
So do what scares you is important because you need to be able to have daily, and I will even break it down to hourly. So how I do things is on an hour by hour basis. So I will challenge myself every hour if I have the ability and the desire and the willingness to be able to do it, to be able to try something new, to be able to do something new, to be able to say something new that is outside of my comfort zone, to be able to see if I've hit a home run or if I've literally struck out. But that attempt is so important because without us self-challenging ourselves, then everything in life becomes so scary, so overwhelming, so frightful that we then don't know which way to turn. So when we do what scares you, it helps you to be able to build up the confidence, the strength, the ability, the wherewithal, the willingness, and the desire to be able to conquer things, or on the female level, to be able to communicate or resonate with another living human being, to be able to then, and again, to team up with them, to be able to then, as a team, to be able to then overcome things that you would normally not overcome, right?
Yeah, and that restores a lot of confidence.
So imagine, picture in your mind, a boxer with no hands and no feet.
Interesting.
How effective would that boxer be in the ring if the person could not move in the right direction or physically be able to try to swing out and to be able to grab a hold of something or to be able to hit something, to be able to create an impact that was worth winning over, right?
Well, for one thing, the boxing gloves wouldn't really fit.
Well, correct. And the second thing is that your agility, how you do what you do, wouldn't work either.
Right.
It would be very stiff and rigid, right?
Yeah, the footwork wouldn't be all there.
Right. Now, I'm placing a female image in your mind for those beautiful females. So imagine being able to get into your most beautiful dress ever, but then not be able to have anything else that adorns it. So the dress is beautiful, but you have no makeup on, you have no jewelry on, you've got nothing else other than the dress on.
Right, you got bedhead going on.
Right? And then you want to be able to go out and make a great first impression. So in that scenario, in that situation, emotionally, physically, spiritually, you got three elements that immediately bind you, that cause you to be able to have stress and duress, because it's something that scares you, because going out in your natural element without to be able to have the face coverings, without being able to have the perfume on, without having to have jewelry on, to be able to accent, your curves and who you are as a person, that makes it a huge, big insecurity blanket instead of a dress, right?
Right.
So for those people that need to be able to dress up, to be able to show up, just like the boxer scenario, is that by having the right techniques, by having the right procedures, by having the right daily habits that put you in the right positions you to be able to win every time that you get outside of your comfort zone and into something scary or new, right?
Yeah. So help me understand this here, Kevin. When you're going into a situation and you haven't prepped enough, then doing what scares you can be a really bad thing. But when you have made the proper steps and put those in place prior to doing what scares you, then it allows you to overcome that fear.
Because it's all natural. You see, that's the whole thing. People get just so indifferent about it because it becomes such a natural thing that occurs that people are like, that's all I needed to do?
Right.
And it really is true. It's one of the most natural things that once you resonate with it and do what is required of you to do, it becomes just a natural part of you, right?
Yeah. Right. And the more that you do it, the more that you're going to naturally be able to do more and more of it moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Take bigger steps.
So, number 10, express what works for you. And here's what I mean. It's not just communication. It's body language. It's more than just body language.
Well, it's communication with oneself, too.
Well, right. Express what works for you, right?
Yeah, you got to be able to express to yourself, you got to be able to tell yourself the truth.
What are the different ways that one can express oneself?
Well, you can express yourself physically, or the way you dress and the job you have, so on and so forth. You can express yourself emotionally, like we were talking about with confiding in other people. Sometimes you have to have an emotional release. And then also journaling is a great way to express yourself emotionally. And then expressing yourself spiritually is perhaps one of the most powerful examples that I can give. Is in prayer, shown to have multiple health benefits emotionally, physically, and spiritually, by the way. Prayer is expressing yourself on a physical and emotional level at the same time that turns into a spiritual communication with God that's able to restore confidence within you to be able to express yourself outside of that prayer session moving forward, because you've already told God about it. You've already put him before you in that situation, and he's backing you up now as you leave the closed closet door, as you're leaving and going into the world. You're walking out like a lion when you walked in there like a cat, like a kitten.
Or like a sheep.
So
right?
like a sheep. So that confidence is now built up and can reinforce you with expression in everyday life.
Right. So in order to be able to express what works, you got to be able to be expressive. And that is verbally, physically, and I can't express this enough. We've got a beautiful podcast on body language, right? But how you position yourself positions your whole entire level of communication when resonating with another living human being. It's that when you put yourself in the right place, in the right position, not only does it send a quiet message that needs no introduction, but it also be able to set the tone and the standard for which you are then resonating back to you the outcome.
Yeah, and you can't express yourself if you're holding on to fear, anxiety, worry, how other people are looking at you. Like you were talking about with going out in a dress but nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
There's obviously going to be, in that situation, anxiety around how you look. But if you don't allow that to happen, it allows you to let go of that fear, because now, unless there's a very deep underlying problem or issue, then you should have that confidence as long as you put the proper steps in place.
Absolutely. So now moving forward, number 11, allow yourself to feel negative emotions. Why is this important, Noah?
Well, allowing yourself to feel negative emotions really is inescapable. But it's the allowing part, that word, is what makes the difference. Because when you have let go of the need to control these emotions, of the need to fight them, then you're now allowing it. And they come to you, but as quick as they came, they can leave as long as you don't have an emotional attachment to those negative emotions. You can feel anger, you can feel worry, fear, and grief without necessarily acting on those emotions.
So would you agree with me that anything negative emotions-wise is all about how you view your environment?
Let me take a second to think about that one.
Your surroundings, your situation. How did you get to be able to be negative in the first place?
Yeah. So
where did that come from? Where's its source?
The environment is something that it can be your immediate environment, the room that you're in, but it also can be a life situation type of environment. You know, when you're processing negative emotions, if you have been fighting with them for a long time, they're much more likely to appear in your environment more often. Whether it's your internal environment, how you feel internally, or your external environment. So it depends on, I suppose, your level of worship. And these are your words, Kevin. But the way in which you worship, and worship is something that's done every moment of every day in some way, shape, or form. So if you have the proper object of worship, then those negative emotions will have no power in your environment. They may be there, but you will know already prior to them even showing up that they don't have power. And having that prep, having that environment already set up prior to them coming is the most powerful thing that you can do to be able to not hold on to them when they come.
Right. Because when you allow yourself to feel negative emotions, you then allow yourself to be able to have self-sustaining power of rebuking.
Right, exactly.
So the bottom line is that if you didn't have negative emotions, you wouldn't then have any need for rebuking. Rebuking is literally being able to emotionally, physically, spiritually, to be able to cast out, to be able to eradicate, to be able to remove, to be able to alter, to be able to change, to be able to literally snuff out what it is that is affecting you at that second, at that moment, at that hour, right? How does one rebuke something effectively?
That's the question. You got an answer for us?
You have to be able to not only entrust on who you are, but on where it is that you're wanting to send that negativity to, right?
Yes.
So when you are rebuking it out of your system, you're wanting to literally to have it go to rest instead of being able to go to the rest of everyone else, right?
Right. That's blaming. That's pointing fingers. That's choosing to put that negativity and its source on some person or some other situation in life instead of taking responsibility for even being able to feel it in the first place and being empowered by that and your ability to rebuke it. You're now, instead of rebuking it, you're actually taking it on by pointing it towards someone else. You have to grab it in your hand before you can throw it.
Correct.
You know? So if you don't grab onto it, then there's no one for you to be able to throw it towards.
Correct.
You just it kind of fizzles out. You know, it dissipates into thin air.
Right. Because just like any object in the world, like a cell phone, if someone was to have handed you a cell phone, tell you to go call God, you would have to be able to reach the cell phone and try to be able to call God, right?
Well, you need to know the number.
Right.
I don't think there is a phone number for that.
The number of the frequency, the God code. But the bottom line is that you have to be able to know where it came from in order to be able to handle it. So where did the negative emotions come from? Where did the negative feelings come from? Where did the negative energy come from?
Yes, and we did another beautiful podcast on the power of forgiveness, and I think this has a role to play in what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a big difference between pointing fingers,
blaming,
and tossing that negativity back at the source, and recognizing the source.
Correct.
Recognizing it is not blaming it. It's simply realizing the reality of where this came from, but having the forgiveness wherewithal within you to be able to not toss it back.
Correct. So it's more than a golden rule situation. Do you want to tell us you would want to have done unto you, right?
Right.
So you stop that cycle by being able to disempower that negativity by having the wherewithal, intelligence to be able to know where the negative source came from, because you just don't get negativity out of nowhere. It doesn't come out of the blue. You either have surround yourself with the wrong people, you've either listened to the wrong thing from people, or you've watched TV, or you've listened to something on the radio. There's something there that has caused this to be able to come up, that has come into your environment, and you need to know, okay, well, prior to this event, where was I? What was I doing? Who was I with? To be able to kind of dial in where it might have come from. Once you know where it's sourced at, then you can be resourceful in being able to combat it by being able to rebuke it. And rebuking is completely disassembling that emotional feeling altogether without giving it to someone else.
Right. It's letting go of it instead of holding on.
Well, not only letting go, but disempowering the empowerment of that negative feeling, right?
Yes.
So when you get to be in such a great practice of being able to thank the negative feeling for it coming into your life, to be able to then empower it out of your life, it gives you a whole different outlet or an inlet for what, Noah?
For a restoration of your authentic being.
Of who you are as a person, right?
Yeah.
So that leads to the last one. Learn permanent forgiveness.
There it is.
Without being able to forgive people on a permanent level, you then worship them that gave you the issue or the situation in the first place. And the reason why I say it's worship is because when you hold a grudge, that's worshiping the grudge. You're worshiping that person that gave it to you. And people are like, oh, well, I'm not worshiping that person. Yes, you are. If you're holding it into your entity, if you're holding it and literally holding it like a baby, you're literally trying to be able to comfort that situation that someone else has given you so that you can be able to not be as uncomfortable with it in the first place. So in order for you to be able to truly get over anything, you've got to be able to be so confident in who you are to be able to literally forgive that person, forgive those people that have caused that issue in the first place. How do you come to the point of permanent forgiveness? Is that we're all human. Things come up to where we have these micro flashes of thoughts of whatever that negativity was. And even though it was very traumatic, even though it was very life-changing, life-altering, you have the ability to be able to, with these flashes that come up of thoughts and emotions and ideas, to be able to change them instead of having them literally be worshipped by you, to be able to unworship them by disempowering that energy and that emotion in the first place. So instead of always constantly looking at it at a victim mentality or a victim type scenario or situation, to be able to look at it in a third party manner, to be able to see that whatever happened to you, that other person had deeper, darker, more benevolent issues going on in their life that created an outcome that necessarily they weren't pinpointing you, but you happened to be in the way, and so they took it out on you in each and every way, right? So with that being said, is that people are like, oh, well, Pastor, you don't understand my circumstance, my situation. You've never gone through what I've gone through, so how can you be able to say that? The authenticated truth is that no matter what you have gone through, I can be able to, with clarity, to be able to get you through it because I don't worship it like you do.
Right. That's what makes you a mentor.
Yes.
Now, a relevant verse from the Bible on this, you're talking about switching your reaction to these negative situations. And a huge part of letting go is being able to thank those situations for coming in the first place. And how can you thank these situations? How can you be thankful for something negative? There is tons of biblical teachings on this. I'm going to give you one particular verse, but another part of the Bible before I state that verse is how tribulation worketh patience. If tribulation, which is suffering, works patience, you can be thankful that you're growing as a human being in patience and therefore disempower that negative situation.
Absolutely.
And now here's the verse, Philippians 4:6, another one just like what I gave you. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. You're making your requests known to God, thankfully, for negative situations. And whether God answers in the way that you want him to answer or not, having that moment of thanksgiving is enough, if you do it properly, to be able to, instead of being unhappy and pouting, having a woe is me moment, being able to instead have a moment of thankfulness. And that instantly, changes the brain chemistry even. So you're physically, on an even physical level, changing those situations in your life.
Yes. And to be able to wrap this up, when you think a negative situation or circumstance, you're actually thanking God getting you through it.
Exactly.
And so I know that's hard. I know it's difficult. I know it's not easy for you to be able to do it. But every time that you thank God for that circumstance or that situation, the simpler and easier it is for you to overcome it because you're no longer worshiping it. You're no longer taking it personal, and it's no longer intimate to you. It is just a scenario or situation that happened due to the weaknesses of other human beings. And when you recognize that and realize that and understand that it wasn't you that caused the outcome or the issue or the situation at hand, then you can be able to then move forward with that as thankful as those people that value you today.
Amen. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into this episode of Omnipresent Information Connection. We'll meet you on the next episode.
This has been another life-enhancing, authenticated podcast aired by the OIC and brought to you by the faithful OIC sponsors and contributors. Please tune in every week and subscribe to our podcast. And while you're there, explore our website with all the posts, videos, and podcasts that we have created with you in mind. While you're on the journey through our website, you will see our Patreon page where you can become a faithful contributor yourself with the freedom to be a part of our team today. Thank you.